Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at the RetroN 2. It's a console clone that I see all the time when I go into a place called Second and Charles to pick up old games and records and stuff. They tend to sell a lot of this Hyperkin stuff. The RetroN 1, 2, 3, and 5 are what I see in there. The 1, 2, and 3 are hardware clones, while the RetroN 5 is a software clone using emulation. This is a RetroN 2, so it uses the console on a chip solution. So and that's what we're gonna take a look at here. I've already reviewed one console on a chip solution, which is the Gamers Tech 8-bit entertainment system. So now let's take a look at an offering from Hyperkin. This is the RetroN 2. It lets you play NES and Super NES games, Nintendo and Super Nintendo, respectively. And as you can see, the console is styled, at least when you get it in this particular color, is styled to look a lot like the American Super Nintendo with its purple and gray and white plastic. There's also a version of this available in red and black. The same goes for many of their other offerings. Now, you get the console, you get two controllers with it, you get the AV cable, you get an S-video cable. That's one thing I should mention. This thing is actually capable of outputting S-video, which is really good for these old consoles because it sharpens the picture quite a bit. You also get an AC adapter. So the fact that you can use S-video is why this thing was significant to me. Because what S-video does is it separates luma and chroma, which gives you a much nicer looking picture. Fortunately, my TVs don't support it, that are up here, but it's still nice to have the option. You can pause to read that if you like. There you have it. This is the RetroN 2 box. Now, the reason I'm making this video is because not only did I get stuck with this system due to a debacle with store credit, but nobody else on YouTube seems to have made a decent review of one of these. Some of the videos I've watched have been some like 13 or 14-year-old kids saying, I bought the system, I plugged it in, and I played a game. Yeah, fantastic. Let's give this a decent review, shall we? So let's open the box. This is what you get when you open the box, is this weird thin plastic packaging. AC adapter, audio and video cables, both controllers. There's both the controllers, which look very cheap, and they're definitely not of the best of quality from what I hear. I'm betting you anything that these controllers are rebranded Tomy controllers, or whoever. It seems like all these reproduction controllers are made by the same company, and they just farm them out to people like Tomy and Hyperkin, and so they can put their name on it. These controllers, I can tell you right off the bat, in general with clone consoles, controllers that you get with them are not going to be very good. They're just not. Because they are reproduction controllers, which generally are all crap for one reason. That is that the D-pads on these are just not good. The D-pads don't have a stabilizer in the middle of them that lets you be precise. Yeah, that goes for both of these. Both of them have the bad D-pad. That's the main reason why I would say stick with original controllers or third-party controllers from back in the day, because they had decent D-pads back then. Now they don't. So, when you get a clone console in general, expect crappy D-pads, because that's just the reality of these reproduction controllers. They're just not that great. They're built cheaply. They're built to just get the job done, basically, and not be that great of controllers. So, I'm going to try using these anyway, but I know they're going to be cheap and terrible, so yeah. Here's the console itself, which is very lightweight. So we'll take it out of the plastic and take a look at it. And here's the beauty itself. As you can see, it has that same sort of purple as the Super Nintendo, except it's a little bit brighter, I think, than the Super Nintendo's was. Super Nintendo had a darker purple. Sort of more like the RetroN logo up there. As you can see, this thing does two systems. It does the NES and the Super Nintendo, and has respective slots for each. Now the stupid thing is there's a nice eject mechanism here that actually feels pretty solid. But that only works in the Super Nintendo slot. You see the purple levers there? That pushes your game up. In the NES slot, you don't get that. Plus, you can see the board right through there. Wow. Looks like a similar slot to other clones I've seen. So, looks like it's nothing new. On the front, you have absolutely nothing except for this half-moon shaped thing. On the side, you have controller ports for Nintendo and Super Nintendo. This thing actually comes with controllers that fit into those inputs as well. So it's not some weird controller that Hyperkin came up with like they did for the RetroN 3 and 5. And then, of course, there's for Player 2 on the side there. This is something I really like about these systems on the back, is that you get standard jacks. You don't have an AV multi-plug, none of that stuff. It's just standard RCA jacks and a DIN connector for S-Video. And, of course, DC power plug, which is also quite universal. I saw one review where some kid said that if the power adapter dies, you can't get a new one, which is stupid because all you have to do is read the transformer and buy one with the same tip and the same reading and the same ratings. So it's just a universal AC adapter. It's no big deal. If the adapter breaks, you can buy a new one at Radio Shack or something. So there you have it. That is the console. Now, of course, on the front, you can switch between NES and Super Nintendo, and the switch to do that is very light. You could bump that by accident, and it would go to the other console, probably. Power button. Reset buttons, which feel a bit... These feel a bit cheap and nasty, actually. And, of course, the eject button, like I mentioned earlier. So, nothing too fancy. Seems like it would get the job done. Now, I have seen other people do side-by-side comparisons of the performance of these two consoles. Mainly the visuals and the sound. The visuals seem just fine. The sound of this console seems to be a bit loud and a bit distorted sometimes, depending on what game you're playing. So, I think the audio of this console isn't perfect. It sounds pretty good. It has the right tone that it should, but certain sounds just don't work. Like if you play Rad Racer on this, the engine won't sound quite the same. It seems to be a common thing with these clone consoles, is that the sound is not quite what it was on the original, simply because of the console-on-a-chip solution that they use for these types of clones. Okay, I have the system all hooked up with its controllers and everything as well. Now, AC adapter. I actually read a review for this thing on Amazon that said they bought this for their kid on Christmas Day. They plugged it in, and smoke came out of it. I really hope that doesn't happen to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to film this. And if that does happen, then you'll see it right here. Okay, so first things first, with my nice spaghetti in the background here, let's actually try inserting a game and see how it feels. Okay. What's a game I don't care about? Kings of the Beach. Very tight connector. Yeah, this is one tight connector. This is where the eject button would come in handy. Wow, that's tight. Now, what about a Super Nintendo game? So, oh, here it is. All right. NBA Live 96. That doesn't feel nearly as tight, actually. There you go. The eject mechanism works pretty well. I've heard people say it's intermittent for them, but for me it's working every single time. It seems like the harder you push, the more you can make this game fly out. Yeah, seriously. That thing can go flying. Alright, so As far as the cartridge slots, they feel a bit tight on the NES side. On the Super Nintendo side, it doesn't feel that bad on my particular unit, actually. So, yeah, go figure. There you have it. So, let's plug this in and actually give it a shot. Okay, I have it plugged in through Composite, so just so you know, that's what we're going to be using to test it. And let's see if Kings of the Beach works. Man, that cartridge slot. One thing I've been reading is that you shouldn't jiggle the cartridge either, because that'll mess up the game, so we'll be testing that as well. Game appears to work fine. Well, I can hear already the audio is quite loud and quite distorted. So let's try playing volleyball. I'm doing really badly at it. Like, even the ball bouncing sounds a bit off. I'm bad at volleyball, guys. There we go. Seems to work just fine. That was when I jiggled the game. I'm jiggling the game right now, and it's doing absolutely nothing. Hitting the console, not doing a thing. So, on my unit, the cartridge slot is tight enough to keep the game in there. Let's try some unlicensed games. This is the Tengen version of Crackman here. I'd assume this will work just fine. Yeah, this works just fine. No issues at all. It's too loud, though. The visuals in this game seem to be fantastic. Plays that unlicensed game, no problem. So let's try everybody's favorite, Bible Adventures. This is a Color Dreams or a Wisdom Tree game. The audio is just so loud out of this console. I don't know what they did to the amplifiers, but... like, listen to this. That little pop at the end of each bass note there, that doesn't happen on a regular Nintendo. The sound of the cow sounds a bit weird, too. Yeah, the sound coming out of this console is not great. It's passable, it works fine, but it's not wonderful. I'm just going to say that. Let's try my favorite game, RC Pro-Am. Oh, that sounds nasty. When you combine all the engine noises together. I don't know if you can see it, but there's also some vertical lines. Not quite jail bars, but vertical lines at least. There's some jail bars here. Not quite as bad as the top loader I have, but there's some vertical lines here, as you can see, that don't look that great. Oh yeah, you can see that from even way back here. So compared to the Gamer's Tech 8-bit entertainment system, the sound is more accurate as far as tonal quality, but it's too loud. It distorts itself too much, so they amplified the sound a little too much on this particular system. Now let me put in Mario Brothers / Duck Hunt so I can show you the vertical lines a little bit more clearly. See, it's not nearly as bad as a top loader will be. The vertical lines aren't horrible. This is usually where you would see it the most in this particular game, but I don't really see it here. The lines don't really look that bad compared to a top loader, so it's actually pretty good. The visuals on this are fantastic. Just as good as, you know, composite on a regular Nintendo. The colors look a bit brighter than usual, but not overly so. Color palette isn't 100% accurate, but it's good enough. It's a little bit more true than it is on the 8-bit entertainment system, I think. So the NES portion of this seems decent. The audio is a bit too loud, but seems pretty accurate compared to the Gamer's Tech system. It's decent. I would say it's pretty decent. So I think now we should test the Super Nintendo portion, see how accurate that is. And we're going to be testing a couple of games with this. We're going to be testing, of course, NBA Live, and we're going to be testing Super Game Boy, because I've seen on some clone systems that can get very loud. So we'll see what happens with Super Nintendo. I've never seen Super Nintendo played on the RetroN systems, so this will be a new experience. Let's try it out. The controller feels a bit thicker as far as the Super Nintendo one that comes with the goes.
Sports. It's in the game.
Let's go back to 96 for a while, guys. Controller seems to work. The sound is quite distorted. Yeah, Super Nintendo sound has the same problem as the NES sound does. It just sounds overblown and distorted, like they just amplified it way too much. That does not sound great. So I have a feeling that means that the Game Boy, the Super Game Boy, is going to be very loud. So let me go get the other cartridges and we'll take a look at those. Okay, let's try another game. Adjust the camera slightly here. Okay, let's try Winter Olympic Games by US Gold. I recall this game having pretty good music, so let's see how it sounds. America. Ooh. In the lower frequencies, it sounds a bit odd. Let's do skiing. Yeah, the sound is pretty good in this game. It seems like whenever there's a game with a lot of low bass or loud noises, it's just not very good. As you can see, I suck at skiing, so let's try another game. Super Mario World, I think, will probably sound okay. The visuals are just fine. Yeah, this looks just fine to me. Visuals are perfect, sound is just fine. Yeah. Super Mario World, the sound is just fine. So it seems to only be certain games with certain types of sounds that really make it distort that much because of the way it's amplified. Let's try Super Mario AllStars. I don't think it's going to make a difference on this particular one. So let's try Mario 2. Luigi. Yeah, the doors don't make it distort, so it's only certain types of sound at certain volume levels that seem to do this. If your game is loud, it will overdrive the RetroN. That seems to be the verdict here. So a lot of these games with softer audio don't seem to make a difference. But where I think the difference will be made is with Super Game Boy. So let's try the Super Game Boy. I'm going to load up Super Mario Land 2, and we'll see what happens. It's not overdriving it. It actually sounds pretty good. Yeah, that's a surprise. It actually doesn't overdrive it with the Super Game Boy. Let's try a few more games. How about Centipede? Oh, that overdrives it big time. Listen to that. This is a loud game, so it kind of overdrives it a bit. Yeah, it does a little bit with the Centipede sounds. I love that sound for the spider. That's silly. Yeah, games like this that are a little bit louder will overdrive it. It's not nearly as bad as I've seen on, I forget what system I saw was reviewed. It might have been the RetroN 3 that had really overblown sound. Not quite sure what it was. Let's try Pokemon Blue. See what that sounds like. Whoops. Seriously? Yep. A little bit distorted on the high end there. Oh, that's loud as hell. Listen to that. Yeah, sound is very overblown on this one. Yeah. Not good. Just listen to that. That's so bad. Okay. I think that proves the point quite well. Pokemon Blue absolutely did it. So, the RetroN 2. What's the verdict on this system? It'll play your old games just fine. The visuals seem good. The audio seems accurate, but overblown. That's the main flaw with this console, is the audio. The audio is quite overblown, quite distorted. It seems like they amplified it way too much, because I had to actually turn my TV down to hear that. And you'd think that louder audio would be better, but in this case it actually just distorts the whole thing. So RetroN, I think, This Retron, I think, needs a little bit of work. It'll work just fine. If all you want to do is play your games and don't really care about the audio, it'll work just fine for that. It has 97% compatibility with games, just like the Gamers Tech 8-bit entertainment system. However, there's a list of games that this one won't play. Those include Castlevania 3 on the NES side, and I think Super Mario RPG is an example of one on the Super Nintendo side. I don't know about Super FX games or FX chip games. Not quite sure about that, because I don't have any here to test. This system will play Castlevania 3, this one won't. So it seems like between different clone systems, there's inconsistencies on compatibility. So this is why it's important to compile a compatibility list for consoles like this. So what do I think of the Retron 2? The build quality is okay. The plastic seems a bit cheap. You can see spots where the molding was, like right here and here and here. Plastic seems like your typical modern sort of questionable quality. The system itself works just fine. Plays my games no problem. I didn't have any issues where the slots where I would bump the system and the games would stop working. Seems to work just fine. Both of my controllers do work. They seem to be made by, like I said earlier, they all seem to be sort of the same. This is the clone controller that came with the Gamers Tech system, and it's exactly the same in every single way. So I'm pretty sure all these controllers that you get with clones are exactly the same. They just put Hyperkin's name on it instead of just having it generic or be Tomy or some other type of name. So if you're in the market, you still have all your old cartridges for your systems, and you'd like to play your old games, this system will definitely do that, depending on what games you have. As long as they aren't really obscure, they will work. If you're just into stuff like playing Super Mario, this will be just fine. It's a cheaper option to get back into gaming. Sometimes you can find a regular NES for cheap at a flea market somewhere, but oftentimes the front loader models will have issues reading your games. So these are easy enough to come by, and they will work for the most part. I would just not recommend using the stock controllers because these reproduction controllers on any clone are going to be complete crap. So I recommend sticking to the original controllers. They are much, much better. So I recommend finding some of those and picking those up instead. That is the Retron 2. It's a decent system. If all you really want to do is relive your childhood days and don't really care about it being the original system, one of these will be just fine. It'll work. It'll get the job done. The only real qualm I have with this thing is the audio. The audio is just not as good as it could be. So there you have it, folks. That's the Retron 2. It's not too bad of a system, actually. I was expecting a lot worse based on the reviews I saw. I'd rate this as pretty okay, as opposed to bad or great. Pretty okay is where I would put this. It will definitely get the job done. It will play your games that you played as a kid. Does everything it needs to do and does everything it says on the tin. So there you have it. That's the Retron 2. It's decent. Hope you enjoyed the video, and have a good one, everybody. Ciao.